As we get started, we will call to order 4 governmental entities, and then we will move on with our agenda. So I call to the Ames City Council. Excellent. Ames Parks and Recreation Commission. Thank you. Mary Greeley Medical Center Board of Trustees. Thank you. Story County Board of Supervisors. Thank you. Excellent. Welcome to all of you, to Heartland Senior Services, to Iowa State University, and DMAC representatives, as well as the public. We anticipate this being a wonderful evening together. I am Donna Gilligan. I am the facilitator for this evening. I have also been volunteering as the facilitator for the steering committee over the last 3 years, as well as the last year with the campaign cabinet team. Tonight, you have your agenda in front of you as to how we will proceed. I've also placed it on the screen. As we move forward, we will have the opportunity to look at a project overview. Brian Dieter will be leading us through that. Many of you have seen most of that information. However, there are many new people around the table since our meeting February 5th of last year. So Brian will get us calibrated around the project overview. Then John Hala and Sarah Buck will come forward and talk about what they have learned about the Healthy Life Center concept as they've been doing their due diligence. Then we will have the philanthropic assessment, what have we heard? And that will be facilitated by our campaign cabinet team leaders of Ann Campbell, Warren, Madden, Bev, and team. Also, we will be hearing from Jan Barron and Dave Tucker during that time. They will be sharing their experience as they have gone forward to secure philanthropic dollars to support the Healthy Life Center. In addition, we will be looking at the project budget, the funding streams, the shared costs and contributions. Take a look at that from the perspective of how much of a challenge we still have before us. And then how do we move forward into required agreements? What would the bond referendum look like? And what are the next steps that each of the entities around the table will be making over the course of the next couple of months? You will see bullet number 11 is reactions and questions. If at all possible, we would like to take the opportunity to share all information, and then we will have an open time for questions and interaction. So, with that said, after we've had as much information shared as you would like to have, then we will move forward into our adjournment. And we will, due to the governmental entities, we will make that an official statement. So what can you expect from tonight? There are 3 desired outcomes that we look for you to walk away with. They are, at the end of this time, you will have the information and increased understanding of the Healthy Life Center so that you can make a conscious decision about support. So we will do our best to provide that information, and then through your interaction with the cabinet team, with the steering team, we will take the opportunity to increase your understanding. Secondly, you will walk away with an understanding of the philanthropic support that has been established to this point, and you will have a clear understanding of next steps. So that is how we will proceed. Thank you. Excellent. So now I invite Brian Dieter to come forward and lead us through the project overview.
Thank you, Don. Good evening, everybody. It's tough to be asked to level set in a group that we've been working on for over 3 years. But that's what I'm going to try and do. And I will try not to be too duplicative for those of you that are well aware of the project, but to try and give you all some fundamental concepts that we've been working on. And when I say we, here's our collaboration partners. You've heard them mentioned already this evening. And because you're a collaboration partner does not mean that you've guaranteed funding thus far, right? In fact, I'm aware of none that have actually signed on the dotted line or are committed, but everyone has helped shape, and that's been important. Everyone has helped shape, and that is one of the key characteristics that we see in this project, is the cooperation of multiple entities, all bringing together their various assorted skill sets to make something truly what we believe is unique, one of a kind, and for the good of all in our communities. We created a purpose statement. We review this at each and every collaborative meeting. You can read it, but there are some real key words in there, including one of a kind center. Yes, it is a center, it is a place, and it should be thought of as a place where people will go to advance healthy living. You can see making the goal of healthy living accessible and enjoyable to all, to people of all ages. So some come today thinking it's an exercise facility. I'd ask you to think of it maybe as a place where movement takes place. Some of you might know, and we'll certainly cover, that there is a demonstration kitchen in there, and yet no one says, oh, it's a restaurant. So I want you to think in those types of thoughts. Can we provide an opportunity for people to take a journey they might not take otherwise towards healthier living? Is it through community coming together? Is it through educational opportunities? Is it through just a cross-pollination or making more things available in one place than what you might ordinarily see? This concept, and this graphic was put together very early on in our process, and we found it to still represent a lot of what we're trying to get at. Yes, there is a physical activity component. There's a health and nutrition component. There's also a social interaction. When we think social networks, I think we all agree that we have more than enough virtual social networking. But I think we have gotten to a point where we need to say that is not a substitute for actual human interaction. And so we see all three of these being significant components. And of course, we took the liberty of surrounding that with education and applied student learning, because if there is a characteristic of our community, I think it is that we are an education-friendly, education-centric community. So since we have those resources in our community, why wouldn't we want to bring them to bear at this Healthy Living Center? And you see at the overlap of all, at the intersection, so what we want to have folks think about it is how do they live well and be well. We believe there's an ample opportunity for both education and applied student learning. And we're pleased to be able to feature that. More particularly, when we look at programs that might take advantage and might actually have opportunities for research, learning, student experience, et cetera, we've listed a number of them, certainly with our two major educational institutions that are in our communities here. So some key drivers. At the podium, I have a little snippet. You all remember newspapers, right? A little snippet here from a newspaper out of Des Moines called The Register. Iowa ranked 10th highest, not 10th best, 10th highest in youth obesity. And the article begins, see if any of this sounds familiar. Sugary pop, lack of exercise, sedentary activities, watching TV, screen devices are factors influencing youth obesity rates in Iowa and certainly throughout the world. There's also a research study up here. It's a research study from Mayo Clinic. Their work that has proven that a worksite wellness program with attendance leads to a significant dollar savings for employer healthcare costs. And in particular, there's a number of results, outcomes. People with greater number of visits, of course, have better body mass index, completely lower annual cost of their healthcare encounters, et cetera, to the order of magnitude of something around the neighborhood of $10,000 to $15,000 per employee if they can actually have folks take advantage of. And remember that employees sometimes include family members, so maybe one employee carries the insurance for a family, but significant savings. Key factors here, whether it's our kids, which will be our future generations, whether it's people in the workforce today, we can see benefits for both. We also see a number of factors that we've listed out here for you. Quality of life opportunities, certainly, and for all, for families, for millennials, retirees. Workforce, no secret that we revel in the fact that our unemployment is extraordinarily low. And at the same point, we struggle to be able to demonstrate an adequate workforce for workplace expansions that might naturally wish to come here to Ames and Story County. I've touched a little bit on the health statistics. Another factor that supports this, we've got about 3 years before we lose our indoor municipal swimming option. As the high school works towards creating a new educational center for Ames High, unfortunately the current pool, the indoor pool that's been jointly operated between the city and the schools, is in the path of that improvement and will be demolished as a part of that construction. So we've got about 3 years. The site has been selected. You'll hear as additional speakers go through what we've heard as we went through some listening activities throughout the community. One of the things you'll hear is that there was a component of folks that said, could we place this downtown? Downtown would be a really great place. Could it be? Because it might be a hub for some additional development around. When you look at an aerial or any other type of map of our community and you try and find a site that would accept a property like this, and in particular, if you wish to maybe even go a step further and say, we'd really like not to take something off the taxable rolls, you find there aren't a lot of choices. And so we have worked with and have identified this spot on Ontario at Shoal, currently owned by Iowa State University. And it does have some nice features in that the site works. It is relatively close to the Furman Aquatic Center. There's some accessibility for other modes of transportation besides vehicles, including our existing trail system and SciRide. And we have a willing, likely a willing seller at potentially a favorable price. So that makes it a good site, we believe. And as we've talked through this project, we believe that the most important ownership is that the city would actually own and manage. Heartland and Mary Greeley, for example, would be tenants. Then we have a number of pictures that will demonstrate conceptually what we think it might look like. And this is prior to the engagement of an architect to do design development. Okay, so this is conceptual. So if you don't like the color of brick or the amount of glass, we wanted to put something up that looked real, but this is not what it necessarily would be. It's just a concept. If we put circles and bubbles up there, you'd say, well, it's not a real thing. So now it's more real, but these pictures make it more real than it actually is. We haven't made these decisions, but we expect that there would be elements present in these concepts that we'd wish to carry through as we did design development. We would expect to have an open lobby, and again, getting at that feeling of connectedness, that people would see and feel and be aware of the fact that they're, in fact, interacting with others. We would expect to have a place where people could stop and get a refreshment, a little cafe featuring some healthy foods, not lost on me, and notice all those fruits up there. But a nice place to have a cup of coffee, to be able to take a break before or after, or even just sit down with a book for 30 minutes or so if you're waiting for somebody to complete some activities there. Some meeting room space. And a variety of aquatic options. I would think you would be able to find just about anything that you should be able to do in a pool in these options, with the exception of there is not a specifically competitive-oriented swimming facility. We believe that will be handled by others in our community, but a lot of recreational aquatic opportunities. I'll just click through these for you. So laps for people maybe like me who would want to swim more leisurely. Not going to worry about a personal record, but I wouldn't mind doing a few laps. Therapy pool, important in particular when folks are recovering and don't have the ability to do full weight-bearing exercise. We can adjust buoyancy in the therapy pool. Some water slides. This is I'll let you in on the secret. We think this is the ploy to get kids more active without them even knowing it. They're just thinking they're having fun. We would have a dedicated space for Mary Greeley to have some outpatient physical therapy. And one of the nice things about having it present with the Healthy Life Center, if you think about when people graduate from a physical therapy program, where do they turn to next? And wouldn't it be nice to be able to have instruction on site? They can say, here's what you've been doing in our physical therapy class. Here's how you could duplicate that in some of the exercise equipment. Sort of a postgraduate program, if you will, for physical therapy patients. Participation kitchen. So we can actually see and learn and look and feel what healthier eating might look like. Preparation of foods, certainly vegetables that might not ordinarily make their way into the table, but with a little bit of prep and a little bit of skill, somebody would say, hey, I could do that. I could do that in my house, and we could introduce that into. And this, I think we'll stress this a little bit more as folks tell you a little bit about a trip, a field trip, if you will, that about 30 people took this fall up to Mayo to see their Healthy Living Center. Heartland Senior Services would be located there, both their outreach services as well as their adult day and their administrative services. Remedying what I think is an overdue improvement in facilities, both in terms of accessibility, space, dedicated, safe space for ever-increasing need for adult day care. And outreach services, they're kind of some superheroes that maybe don't get a lot of press. I can tell you firsthand from working with them at Mary Greeley, they're the people that say, if that's what it takes to have somebody stay in their home safely, we will find the way to make that happen. And we've seen a number of real great success stories with the outreach services. We'll have an indoor playground, and that could be a destination in and of itself for kids to go have fun. And it could also be sort of another inducement for someone to come use the space and say, oh, and by the way, my kids won't be antsy or at home doing what I don't want them to be doing with the screen time. I can actually have them go have some fun. Some other activity areas, including gymnasia, we would expect that those would be open for a number of activities that are listed on this slide. We would also have, in addition to the play area, a child watch area. Now, this is not intended to be a 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. drop your kid off in the morning, go to work and come back. But while you're utilizing the Healthy Living Center, to know that your kids have a safe place to stay and they'd be watched. We would expect to have a walking track, an elevated track, much like in this photo. This is not conceptual. This is an actual built environment. But we would have walking track around the gym and actually in through parts of the building. A few multi-purpose rooms, things as you can see here, kind of a Zumba, yoga, dance, etc. type of opportunities. Again, and we repeat this this visual on every one of these pages because we see these as all being important pieces, component parts of the Healthy Life Center. Some weights, cardio, and open space. Again, opportunities for research projects as well as applied student learning opportunities. But again, not designed to be a fitness center per se, but it will have some strength training and some cardio exercise opportunities. Additionally, an outdoor playground. Because we know when the weather's nice, we want to be able to take advantage of play outside. And then I think a piece that fits in nicely with that idea of better eating, some community garden space. So that's the overview of what we expect the space to feature. Again, we've worked on this for several years. I mentioned that there was a site visit this fall, and to tell you a little bit more about that, our mayor, John Hala, and the chair of the Mary Greeley Board of Trustees, Sarah Buck.
Well, good evening. It's our pleasure to share with you a little field trip we took and went up to Rochester to visit Mayo's Dan Abram Healthy Life Center. And so just a little background on this. I found it kind of interesting. I find it interesting. Who is Dan Abram? He's actually the founder of Slim Fast. And he used Mayo Clinic several times medically, and he was so impressed with the staff that he asked a nurse, what can I do to help you out? I said, well, we don't have time to really go anywhere for fitness. And she thought, well, that was the end of it. A few weeks later, 3 treadmills showed up on the loading dock. Unannounced, no tag, not gift wrapped. And that was the genesis for this whole center. Well, he wanted to keep on giving back. So what happened was he started talking to staff, and the concept of a Healthy Life Center came up. And it's been so successful, they have put, I think, 3 or 4 different editions on, and they're still building on it. And not only was it for employees, but it's for employees' families. And it's also opened up to the community. And I found it actually extremely inspiring to go up there. Partly I'm visually driven from a standpoint of my profession, but also there was 3 components, and it keeps being referred to. I'm dangerous with these, make sure this works. See? Where's the pointer? Okay, all right, thank you. Yep. All right, so this diagram really came to light and became very real to me when I was out there. Think of this as a 3-legged stool: physical activity, health and nutrition, and social networks. Well, I want to talk just for a second about nutrition. What most impressed me, actually, when I first saw the concept, I thought, oh, okay, we got this kitchen, people are going to go in there and just make some food. This is critical to the success of this facility. People talking about it, it's basically learning how we can work with fitness, we can work with rehab, we can work with a lot of different things, but it's what you take in as well too. So I was just very, very impressed with the overall concept, the importance of that, and how integral it is to everything that they do there. And I would say that probably the people I talked to when we went up there felt exactly the same thing. Secondly, I have 3 points. Second one is Mayo views this as an investment with an ROI. What's the return on the investment? They're seeing less employee absenteeism, less workplace injuries from lifting because they're in better condition. They're seeing better staff retention, and they're having much easier time attracting people to come work there because they know that they have this phenomenal facility that attracts individuals and their families can go ahead and enjoy them. I would say that we did think differently or think this way. The Healthy Life Center is an investment in our community. It's not a cost, it's an investment. And the return on that investment is not only for now, but it's also for the decades to come. Maybe a paradigm shift, but I think it's something that we have to really be thinking about from a standpoint of what can it really do and how can it really benefit our community. And the third thing, and it was mentioned and shown on several of the slides, and that is, and this came from talking to people from Iowa State, had a great time talking to about 15, 20 people on the way up and back, as well as over there. But the opportunity, let me make sure I read this correctly. It's student, Iowa State and DMAC applied student learning opportunities. I was amazed at how many of these are already occurring cross-pollinating between Mary Green Medical Center, Iowa State, and DMAC. This is going to basically be a magnet for people to come to learn, to understand what's going on in real life, and to really help develop and cultivate healthy lifestyles. So let Sarah share her impressions.
The emphasis that we have had so far with the Healthy Life Center and Ames has focused a great deal on nutrition and exercise. I was struck at Mayo about the emphasis on a third pillar, and that is resilience. They have spaces dedicated in the Dan Abraham Healthy Living Center that help people decompress. Now, this is a healthcare staff wellness program, and healthcare is very stressful. But everybody knows that stressors are part of our lives these days. So I sent Nancy Carroll an email after we returned and suggested that even if there's not dedicated space for resilience, I think that there are opportunities to work that into the programming. Secondly, because of the great success that Brian mentioned with the reduction in healthcare costs for their own employees, reduction in absenteeism, I think once the Ames Healthy Living Center is built, it will be very attractive to businesses in our area who don't have dedicated wellness facilities for their employees, to provide incentives for their employees to get the exercise, nutrition, and resilience assistance that they need. It's pretty hard to program that before the building is built, but it's something that I think we should be definitely thinking about. So it's focused on the health and well-being of Mayo staff. In Rochester, there are some 37 or 38,000 Mayo employees. That's bigger than some Iowa counties. And more than 15,000 of their employees take advantage of this wellness center. There were people, the day we were there were people literally coming and going all the time. I did not see a lot of youth, of children there. And it may have been the time or the space, it was midday. But I think the Ames concept of having a multi-generational facility where old and young and in between can get healthier together is a real plus.
I might just add too is that might just add also that I've had the privilege of interacting with a number of mayors around the county here recently. And Brett Barker and I have who's the mayor of Nevada, have had the opportunity to attend several meetings together, and he and I were just talking the other night just about the overall concept, and they are considering doing a community center, some gyms and a little exercise. But he just was singing the praises of this Healthy Life Center, and so I said, well, can I quote you? And he said, sure. And so basically the quote is, there's countless possibilities for collaboration and shared programming between the City of Nevada and the Healthy Life Center. Such a facility would be a benefit to Nevada residents and for all of Stewart County. We're thinking about this as in a regional standpoint, not just for Ames, not just for a certain segment, but basically it's for our entire county. We have to think regionally. We have to start thinking beyond our borders, because the point is that that will help us be strong and grow as a county as well as in a region.
You might be interested in knowing just one more point about the last slide. The Dan Abraham Healthy Living Center is a 6-story mammoth facility. We're not looking at something that large here, but I would not be surprised if Ames would not experience the same sort of a response that Mayo has gotten. Future needs to expand. Now on to philanthropy, setting the stage for the update about the efforts to date. For those of you who don't know, I spent a considerable part of my professional life, and I continue on a volunteer basis to be involved in fundraising. And the professional fundraisers who said that this was a project that would take 3 or 4 years, that was not me, but I had the same impression. And when you think about it, the $18.2 million private fundraising goal doesn't include the 3.5 private fundraising goal for Heartland. So it's really 21.7 in private dollars. Ames is a very, very generous community. We have a wealth of organizations that are philanthropically supported. There are a number of campaigns underway, and even generous people have to pick and choose. One suggestion I shared with Ann when we were up on actually coming back from Mayo, not everybody gravitates toward supporting capital fundraising. They don't want to build buildings, but they might be interested in the program. The projection for the Healthy Life Center here is that there will be an operating loss. So my suggestion was that as the campaign moves forward, that they consider asking for endowment funds as well. So the earnings from the endowment could be used to help offset the operating loss and could help defray some of the ongoing maintenance costs. This kind of a facility is going to have some significant maintenance needs. So I'm hoping that that will be part of the plan. If you ask first for money for the building and somebody says no, a follow-up ask for an endowment gift, I think would be very appropriate. Okay.
The other aspect of this, and Brian mentioned it too, is that, my goodness, City of Ames School District passed a $110 million bond issue. I mean, that is absolutely outstanding. Part of that, though, is that they're going to be demolishing the pool. Now, that is at the very end of the project, so we have a number of years before that goes away. But they need to get that cleared out of the way so they can go ahead and finish their overall project. I think they're talking about probably 2022. For those of you who probably know, I owned and operated an architecture and engineering business for about 30 years. I've worked with a lot of public entities, and I have to say, this is an unprecedented partnership that we have going right now. To have 6 different entities locking arms and saying, we're gonna work together. I have not, in my professional career, I never saw it. It was lucky to get 2 entities together, let alone get 6 entities together. I encourage all of us to say, how can we make this happen? It's not like, why should we, but why not? why can't Ames accomplish this? I believe we can accomplish this. This is going to be a milestone for our community. It's going to help with workforce. It's going to help with wellness. And honestly, we all see it. We have, childhoods are inactivity, obesity. We need to help them learn how to eat, exercise, and also for the resilience as well too. So anyway, I just want to publicly recognize and thank, I call her my mayor, Ann Campbell, Warren Madden, and Bev Madden for the outstanding job that they've done, all the work they have put into this undertaking. They have done a great job, and I think it's their turn to start talking.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, do I have to do this, or are you?
Yeah. All right, so I'll show you how to break it.
Okay, we're gonna do this tighter. There you go.
All right. That's much safer. Well, thank you very much. This is probably the midway juncture in this meeting tonight, as perhaps has not been stated. As you know, that this has been going on for 3 years with these 6 entities, which is quite remarkable. But as that was underway, at one point, the city was asked to hire a consultant to come up with a schematic to see if this really would work and potentially what it could look like. And that was presented last February with what it could potentially look like, though, as is pointed out, this is not architectural finished yet. It is simply a schematic plan. But they also came up with costs of what it would be, and thus it would need to have some pretty significant philanthropy going on. And so it's at that point that we stepped in. I think I can speak for the Maddens and say that we were both very flattered as well as quite overwhelmed when this group of 6 entities asked us if we would take on the responsibility as volunteers and untrained in this business to raise significant philanthropic dollars in order to fill the gap from what the public and human service entities would be doing. So with that, I think we'd be first to say that we are totally inexperienced in this, but we did make an effort initially then to put together a team that were not our friends, but people that we thought, we hope they are our friends now, but were people that had tentacles into many different parts of the community and brought many different backgrounds and insights. You see up there the names of who these people are, and they've all been working very hard. I think what I can say is we have become friends. And furthermore, in the last 10, 11 months that we've been working on, I think I can say to a person that we have all become very passionate. We started out with passion, but as we have talked to people around the community, heard the needs, gone to the Dan Abraham Center, I think with confidence speak for everybody saying that we have all become more passionate that this indeed is an important need that needs to be fulfilled in our community. So we've been given the task of going out to put our hand out to people, but it has not just been going and asking. We've also, in this process, made a real effort to listen to what people saw as needs, what the reactions were to these schemes, what pitfalls we might find, and so on. So in looking at this, just briefly, we certainly can't say that we have hit every group there is, every individual there is. I think amongst us in our philanthropic team, we figured that we probably have talked totally to at least on an individual basis to a couple of hundred people explaining this, drinking a lot of coffee in the process. and working very hard on initially working at the major gift proportion. We also, or the city staff early on in this business, met with the neighborhood since it, as Brian pointed out, it was determined after eliminating a number of other location possibilities that the land on Ontario Road was the most desirable place for a variety of things. But there is, since it is in a residential district, that was important that a very first step be made to meet with the neighbors. I think we had about 50 that attended, and I'm happy to say that the vast majority were very enthusiastic, rather than not in my backyard, saying, please bring it to my backyard. There were, the city also had 4 meetings in different locations, most of them in schools around the community, to test the idea, to get feedback. Many of us have talked to officials from various communities in Story County. And then we, whenever possible, have knocked on the media door and tried to get an audience there. There are there it is. This is this is a probably not a complete, hopefully almost a complete list of the groups that we've met with them. Many of them have invited us to come explain this thing they've heard about. Others we've been aggressive and invited ourselves. And I must say that we are, let it be known that we are still more than available to keep at this. I think, I know my schedule for February is still has some on the books. And so if there's anybody else that would like a in-depth presentation, we are more than happy to come. Okay, so as I say, we've been doing this in an effort certainly to get the word out. We are a philanthropy group, and thus dollars are certainly what is driving us, but I think also, as I say, driving the passion and listening to hear. So for those of us who've spent much of our lives working in the public sector entity, we always know that it is important not just to go out and preach the gospel, but to be listening and to take feedback and to do some tweaking as we've gone along the way. So I'd like to just briefly go over what some of those some of the high points are that we've gotten in our feedback. But as I start this, I've got to say right off the bat, without a doubt, I think that I can confidently say that we've had very, very broad-based enthusiasm for this concept and for the services that are not being dealt with in Ames presently, but could be. As a matter of fact, this past week with the weather, I have had a number of people say, why can't we have this now? And particularly those people that have had their children home for more days than they wanted, why don't we have this? Or for me, I say, if only I could be swimming laps rather than sitting in my easy chair. So that, I think, I can say with confidence is one of the things that we hear quite consistently. We also have heard that there are very significant deficiencies in what we have to offer in our community. We have been proud to have the Healthiest Ames organization here that has done a variety of things in making Ames the healthiest city that there is, but all of us do recognize that there are many gaps, some of which have been pointed out tonight. We've already touched on the municipal pool. One of the things that we hear over and over again when we go around is, I can't believe you've got 6 entities sitting down at the same table, all looking at what their needs are and seeing how they can be meshed and interwoven under one roof and under one operation. That Ames is certainly noted for having collaborative efforts, particularly with the university, the city, the county, and so on. But this is bigger and better than we've had in the past. One of the things that we've heard is a concern. And again, these numbers that Steve will be dealing with later, but these numbers have all come from what the consultants have predicted would be needed. And some say, oh, this is going to be expensive, and everybody can't afford it. Well, again, that's something Sarah has touched on, some of the things that she's given us an assignment, I think, for keep going in another angle. But right at this point, this is where we are. But I will tell you that there is one family already that has pledged significantly to this operation, but in addition has also pledged to initiate so-called seed funds to establish a needs-based scholarship so that it would be affordable to all. I might parenthetically note that this is not dissimilar to what happens quietly, but nonetheless happens for memberships in the Furman Aquatic Center. We've heard before, people, particularly those in looking at economic development here, say, oh, if only it could be downtown. We're, excuse me, well, downtown doesn't have 10 acres. Number one, we've been very fortunate to have this 10-acre land available, and furthermore, to have it be owned by Iowa State University and offered to us for $1. Thus, that's a hard business deal to pass up. And then, of course, there are some who have questioned, how much is this going to cost me in taxes? What are the ongoing costs going to be? At this point, given that there are a number of variables, like what the amount of a bond issue would be, we're not yet in a position, but we have a city manager who can come up with those figures once we have them available. So one of the things that we have also heard is, excuse me, that Ames does not have has never had a why. Brian, as a matter of fact, mentioned to me that he was a while ago interviewing a doctor who was looking at coming to work here, and said, in essence, why? But this, in many respects, we look upon as being our why, and more so. We've also heard that the capital costs are perhaps high. They are high. We've never looked at anything of these proportions. But as Warren would tell you if he were up here, and he is going to be in a minute, if we were looking at doing each of these things individually, our numbers guy Warren tells us that probably that would be an additional $15 to $20 million if we were doing these as one-offs. We've also talked to, we've learned, of course, and it's been no secret, that some of the private recreation facilities have been concerned about competition. We feel very keenly that this is not competition, but that it is something that fills a wellness gap and is much more comprehensive. And we certainly are looking, many of us are members of some of these recreation facilities, and probably will continue to be. Our relationship with the rest of the county is, I think, very important as we look at this, in that many of the smaller towns have worked very hard to get their own their facilities, their leagues, and so on. However, as we have talked, I've talked to mayors of some of these communities and said, but what they don't have, and don't have the population base to fund, are year-round swimming, demonstration kitchen, child play areas. So we feel very good about what that could be in terms of the compatible area. We've heard about the interest in using this as something that will help attract workforce. And then finally, I think we say that it is something that is not just a desire, but indeed a true need to make Ames the kind of community that we want to have, and that it is an aggressive, but nonetheless a very fantastic idea. So, as I say, I tell you these things to say, yes, we're out in the philanthropy end. However, we are also out listening and trying to digest the things that we've heard community-wide, and this is what they are. Now, for the drum roll, Warren is here to tell you the exciting news of what our philanthropy committee has been doing very diligently for the last many months. And so please welcome him.
Thanks, Ann. This has been a great project for a little bit less than a year. We've been out working at this, and as the slide indicates, at this point in time, we have commitments of about $5.9 million. And I think we're really pleased with where we are at this point. In a period less than a year, we've been able to raise, almost $6 million. I think in the long period of time Bev and I have been part of the Ames community, this is probably one of the biggest philanthropy projects for the community side that I have been around. So we certainly aren't yet at the $18+ million number that was originally proposed by the steering committee, but we think we've made great progress. As Ann indicated, we've talked with a number of people. We've made a lot of presentations, and we feel really pretty good about where we are. There are certainly some additional contacts that can be made, and as Ann indicated, we intend to keep working at this. One of the areas, well, there are really a couple of, I think, major areas we haven't yet really worked on. There are a number of larger corporate entities in the community where it turns out their philanthropic support comes through some kind of a corporate headquarters or a foundation structure. And in order to sort of seek those funds, the local management groups have indicated we need to make the applications and go through the kind of review processes. So we're in the process of figuring out how to best put that together. As a team, we haven't really focused on that. Additionally, we haven't really gotten into a community-wide fundraising program, and we know there are a number of people that have an interest in providing financial support. And so we want to continue to work on that. As we started out in this, and as shows on that slide, we're pleased with some of the initial major gifts that were given. I know the Fitch family is sitting over here, and we are really appreciative of their support, particularly for the aquatic part of this, and they really were the lead major commitment, and we do want to thank their family for making that commitment. One of the newer additions on this list up there that we probably haven't talked much about as we've gone forward is a commitment from Fairway. They are interested in the food and kitchen component of this project. We've been really pleased as we've had conversations with them. As I'm sure you all know, their headquarters are in Boone. They have a number of employees that work in this area. One of the attractions to them is this site because it is more on the western edge of the community, and they believe they can do some things with their workforce and staff to use this facility. They have a major warehousing operation towards Boone, and they're hoping the employees that are connected with that enterprise can develop some activities in this facility. And again, it's the kind of facility that at least at the present time, Boone doesn't have any, ability or aspiration to develop. So they're really quite interested in this. And I think it's an opportunity for Fairway, which is certainly one of our major employers in the area, to participate. I actually think as we've been talking with them, it's a chance to build some relationships with Boone County as well, who've been part of some of the meetings. So we're pleased with that. You can see some of the other major corporate entities. There are some other groups that we're still talking with. And so we really feel we've made a lot of progress in what is a pretty short period of time without utilizing professional fundraisers. And we think we can continue to raise some additional funds. The team has been a great team to work with. You saw a slide with all of them. We thought you might benefit from hearing from some of the people who have helped us in this effort. And so I'd like to ask Dave Tucker, who is with Workiva, who has been really helpful as we've tried to visit with numbers of people in the business community, particularly, and then Jan Barron to come up and make some comments as they have been working on this project with us. And then I'll come back and wrap it up. So, Dave.
Thanks, Warren. This has been quite a fascinating project. That doesn't mean it's always been fun. I've learned that I don't especially like asking people for money. So why would I put so much time and effort into this? First of all, when I heard about this project, to me, what it really said is this is an amenity for Ames that helps define it as a community, not just as a town or a city. This is a place that brings people together. And that message resonated throughout the community as we talked to people. A big part of my job is trying to encourage people to come work for us here in Ames. And yet about 2/3 of them end up living in Ankeny or Des Moines. And I believe this is one of the places that I will take every young family who comes here and say, this is one of the reasons you want to bring your family to Ames, because this is a place that's going to bring people together and create a community that your family can participate in. Even though everybody I talked to didn't necessarily contribute money, I heard overwhelming support from people saying, this is a great thing for Ames. We need to figure out how to get this done. And I still challenge everyone here to help us figure out how to get this done. Thank you.
My husband, George, and I were very happy to support this effort. And actually, I kind of enjoyed being part of the campaign cabinet, but I'm not a fundraiser either. But I got to talk to so many people who were supportive of this project. And as I thought about it, I remembered that for 20 plus years, we had teenage foster kids in our home. And when we had teenage foster kids, there were so few places where they could go. They weren't on athletic teams. Some of them were in rural parts of Story County originally, and were having treatment here. And I thought, what a wonderful place it would be to have a healthy life center where these children who needed to be integrated into our community and feel valued could come and participate. And I might say that many of them are doing very, very well now. And then when I learned that it would be available to families and children on limited income, like our Furman Aquatic Center is now, that pleased me a great deal too. For many years, I was involved in Beyond Welfare, and I saw the needs in those moms and kids for something like this, where they could come and relax and be involved. Then it occurred to me just yesterday that through the city recreation program, there are so many people from rural Story County or small towns who participate. And I thought of pickleball, for example. I know of somebody who comes from Roland, somebody from rural Ames near the Boone County who come to play pickleball. And then I thought of our badminton group. And we have so many people who come from out of town to play badminton. They come from different towns, from a lot from Nevada, Huxley, Gilbert. And the age range is from about 16 when there's no school to my age. And so that covers a wide age. And not only do we play together, but we're a social group, like that little circle implied the center would be for, and we get together socially. In addition to the age difference, we come from many different birthplaces. And we have people who were born in Indonesia, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Outer Mongolia. I mean, the list goes on. And we have learned about each other's cultures. Some of these are business people. Some are housewives, wives of physicians. They all need to have recreation and socialization, and we have it together. Lastly, I thought of our Story County Square Dance group. We are always looking for places to have lessons, and there aren't many available. So this Healthy Life Center has the potential to serve all of Story County in a wide range of ways, and young to old. So we hope to have more money coming in, and all of you can help in that.
Jan and Dave have been great team members as we've gone out and worked with the community. As I mentioned, we're going to continue our philanthropic efforts. We think we can continue to raise funds for this project. As Brian indicated, I view it as an investment more than a gift because of my Iowa State history and background. Iowa State's spending $40 million a year on health insurance today. If you look at the experience that Mayo had up there, where a third of their employees, by utilizing that facility twice a week, they have lowered their healthcare costs for that group by about a third. You know, Ames is not Rochester, we're not Mayo, and you've got other things in our community, but I believe Iowa State can lower its healthcare costs $2 to $4 million a year if you get a group of people to participate in this. The campus does have facilities, but not everybody in the family component, those facilities aren't really focused on serving them. And so this facility, at least as I've moved around the campus, will benefit a large number of other people. And so entities like Iowa State, where the data is public, I think can see this as a real investment with a positive return. I think it's particularly important, as some of you know, I'm now spending some time at the research park. And that's a lot of small startup companies. Most of them don't have these kinds of facilities or have the ability to have them in their own business. So a community-wide resource will be helpful. It will complement the other places in our community. Another part of this, in addition to the capital costs, which we've been focusing on, we intend to have a commitment from some people for a scholarship program. We want this facility to be accessible to anyone independent of their socioeconomic background, and that is a program that will get funded. We also believe we can get some resources to help support an endowment. As Steve comes up and talks about the operating costs and budgets, there is a gap that needs to be made up, and some of that can be done through this kind of a program. But the reality is, in almost every community, these facilities take some kind of community support to make it work. And so we're pleased with where we are. We certainly still have a ways to go. We still have some people to talk with, but I think it's been remarkable. We've gotten to almost $6 million in less than a year of people who have made firm commitments to support this project. And so we'll keep working at it. And so with that, I think Steve, there you are.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I've been asked to talk about the finances of the project, but I want to again recognize Warren, Bev, Ann, Dave, and Jan and their team, because as Sarah, I learned, let's give them a round of applause. Because I sat back and watched too as we tried to deal with raising funds and learned a lot from professionals like Sarah. And we talked to people from Iowa State Foundation and American Greeley Medical Center Foundation. They always reiterated how long it would take to raise an amount of money this size. It was a very tall task for them all. But also they said sometimes you have to talk to a potential donor maybe 5 to 8 times about a project before they'll actually come through and make the commitment. So we want to thank them all for the work they did. It's kind of incredible to raise this amount of funds in such a short period of time. Let's walk through the finances we could. if we could, and remind you, this is, we had a concept plan that was delivered to you back in February of 2018, if you recall. And here was the finances we showed at the time. RDG, our consultant, put together the estimated cost for the project, a total cost of about $48 million, $48,700,000. Now, that includes all the design costs, land costs, site development costs, even a 15% contingency. So everything's bundled into this particular cost. Now, at the time, we had a steering committee that's been working for 3 years. It's made up of staff representatives of all the 6 partners. So we put together the proposal on the financing side, okay, through a lot of dialogue, a lot of discussion on what we thought would be a good split on financing the project. None of the partners have officially approved these numbers yet. We know that, but we try to be consistent with this and show you how we laid it out over time. So remember, with the $48 million, 48.7, this is how we were going to break out the financing. With the city putting in $17 million, 15 would have to come from a bond issue that would have to be approved by 60% of the public. We'd use another $2 million from an endowment we have, plus some available balances to come up with another $2 million. So $17 million. Marygreen Medical Center would contribute $7 million, which would go to not only their own space, building their own space, because they're going to be a tenant in the space, but also contribute to the shared space, a lot of the shared space of the facility. Heartland has its own dedicated space too, so they're going to help construct that space at $3.5 million. Story County, we were talking about $3 million for Story County, and we'll get into how we came up with that number. Nancy will have a slide for that because I know you're going to ask that question. And then the gap was $18.2 million. So that's where we were back in February. I want to point out another slide, and this has to do with the deficit, because I know everybody's concerned about the operating deficit. Just want to show you that that deficit there was based $473,000. That's in the first year of operations, okay? That number assumes that both Marygreen Medical Center and Heartland Senior Services will pay their proportional share of the operating costs for their space, because we're going to have custodial service. They're not going to have to go out and buy their own custodial service. That will be all factored in, right? All the utilities will be paid for by us on a proportional basis. Things like plowing snow in the parking lots, those type of things. And also assume $200,000 for operations from the county. That gets us down to the $473,000. It's interesting to note, if you look at that number, about $422,000 of that will actually be the city's obligation on the deficit each year. We also had, and I'll show you later how we were, as the staff, the steering committee was laying out how we split the costs for this deficit, how I came to that number. Okay, but let's go back. I just want to point out one other thing that's important and note. You should ask, if you're a funding partner, well, what happens 5 years from now if the roof leaks? If we need to pave the parking lot, how are we going to pay for that? And there's 2 ways we could have done this. We could have entered with the concept that we'll go back to the funding partners when something falls apart, and we'll come to you at the middle of the year and say we need $800,000 from all this. We think that's the best way to go. So what we're going to do is build in the operating budget a depreciation or replacement fund. The first year it's $300,000. So including that deficit really is a $300,000 first year contribution to this replacement fund. Now that'll probably have to be increased over the years. We work with our consulting firm, and they actually laid out when they think the furnaces are going to go bad in the building and how much it will cost at the time. So we kind of laid out a capital improvement plan for the next 20 years or so. But we're going to have to that's going to have to be the operating budget, and we have to stick to that. So when we have to replace certain equipment, windows, things like that, we won't go back to each one of us. We'll have a fund built up. We've done that. Warren helped support that on our ice arena fund, and it works very well because we put away for that through the operations. So I want you to understand how that's going to work. Let's go to the next slide. Now, here's where we are now. The challenge before us, we're about $11.9 million, $12 million of a gap compared to where I showed you we were in February, right? So if we assume, and no one's voted on this yet again, that maybe perhaps Iowa State University will make that land available to us free of charge, or a $1 lease, we're going to have a project about $48,400,000, right? 400,000. So if we keep the same 17 million, the 7, the 3, and we've got the 6 million there, you'll see we have the gap of $11.9 million. Everybody know where we're at there? So the key question is, what are the next steps to fill that gap? We're looking for about $12 million. And here's what we think are some logical next steps for us. I think it's time that we're going to have to start finding out where the partners are. It's time to make a commitment at whatever level you can. So obviously one way you can fill the gap is with more revenue. So we're hoping that one, some, or all the potential funding partners, and there's 6 of them, quite frankly, 6 of them total, can agree to increase their financial commitment to the project. I'm not saying it has to commit to fill the gap of $12 million. We just have to know if it's possible. We first have to know if you're even committing to the level we've talked about. But to fill the gap, one way is to come up with additional money. We just need to know that so we know how much money we have going into it. Now, we're hoping, because we're going to have to start moving ahead, you'll see the schedule, that the funding bodies could go back, discuss this among themselves, and make a decision that they can report back to the city or their steering committee member of the level of commitment. Hopefully, it's at least what I showed you before, because we'll still have a $12 million gap. If there's any additional funds, that will be very helpful, okay, in helping fill the gap. But you can't, also, we're going to have the philanthropic campaign keep going through March too. So maybe there's some other funds out there that our good group could raise, whether it's 500, 300, or $1 million. That would be helpful to us. It's going to take a combination of all these elements, I think, to fill the gap. Now, the third one, and a very important one that we realize, is that I think we're going to go back to steering committee, and we can go back and work with our consulting group. Many of you have worked on projects. You could do design, can't think of the term now. Value engineering, excuse me. Thank you. Value engineering with our consultants. So keeping the same square footage, see if there's any ways we can cut costs, reduce costs without jeopardizing quality of the building. That's very important. Another one we can look at, perhaps other areas to offer to people to cut square footage. Now that's going to be a very sensitive issue because a lot of this is pieced together. It makes a lot of sense. We don't want to cut square footage if it jeopardizes the overall concept of the Healthy Life Center, right? The comprehensive approach to it. But we may have to bring that forward too as some suggestions. And we're hoping that through the month of March, everything's going to, you notice, was going to coalesce in the month of March. The steering committee may come back. We'll have the recommendations from all the groups in terms of the revenue side, the financing. We'll have some ideas on how we can cut costs of the building without reducing square footage. In March, we'll find out if there's some other options we might have for, if we have to, cut square footage, in fact. And then ultimately, it's going to have to go to the city council because the city council is going to be the last dollar in, right? If what's ever left, the council will have to decide at what level do they want to sponsor a bond issue, right, to fill that gap. So that's kind of what we're asking people to do and how we proceed. March is a critical date. I'm going to go to the next slide. So if we find all this out, we're willing to fill a gap, we still have a project, we move ahead, and then we're going to have to move ahead with some agreements. This is where you're really going to have to commit because the council is really on the hook for this. If we enter an agreement with the design engineer and we enter in agreement with a construction company, we're going to be signing on the dotted line. So we want to make sure that we have clearly an understanding from all the parties of what they're going to put into the project now and in the future. So that'll require us through the month of April to solidify these agreements with all the funding entities. We're also going to have agreements with some of the individuals who have naming rights. We'll have to make sure those are solidified. The donors, right? They're going to make sure in return for their money, they're going to get naming rights. And there'll be other types of agreements with people who are going to contribute. It's a little bit scary. This is the first time we've done a project where we would proceed without having all the money in hand. A lot of these donations are going to be made over 3 years. We're going to enter an agreement with a construction company to build a $40 million project, which we're going to be on the hook for, hoping that we'll get those 3-year commitments in. Now, we'll try to get some legally binding agreements, but it is still a bit of a risk. If you talk to the professionals again, sometimes Warren will tell you, I'm not sure they always get 100% of the donors contribute. I believe in this project, the type of donors we're going to have is a little bit different. We're going to have local people who are committed and we can rely on them, but it's a different type of arrangement we've had in the past. So we're going to have to enter in these agreements for the naming rights, Iowa State University for a land lease or a purchase of land. Just so you know, we've also talked about how to share deficits. And so let's say Heartland, we know that capital cost of $3.5 million I talked about, but we've also talked about sharing 10% of the dry space. That's the non-aquatic space, the dry space, the deficit there, plus paying about 3.4% of the total operating costs. That's the proportional share of the square footage. That would all have to be entered in an agreement. Mary Green Medical Center, we've talked about, they have their own tenant space they're going to build, plus about $5.3 million for common space. The concept there, they would help with 40% of the dry space deficit, 10% of the wet space, and then they have their own 11% for their area. Just to show you, the city will be paying for 90% of the deficit on the aquatics and 50% on the dry space. If you look at the breakdown, I told you before that 473, the dry space almost breaks even. The real deficit is in the aquatic center. Okay. Now let's get back to the county, because I know, Loris, you're going to ask us, how did we come up with the $3 million and the $200,000? And Nancy, I think, is going to help lead us through this.
You know, it's been pretty obvious through the presentation of how Heartland's capital and operational expenses are being determined, as well as Mary Greeley, because we're going to be tenants. But it's always been a little bit more difficult to show how the county's money was being pursued, of the roughly the $3 million for the capital and the $200,000 in annual expenses. Steve has been very clear, just as his comments and others have. This is still conceptual. And we want to be very clear that that is where we're talking in the future, where we'd enter into the legal agreements that Steve just reviewed. So conceptually, when RDG came and did the feasibility study this last year, they anticipate that roughly 333,000 visits a year will happen at the Healthy Life Center. And, you know, you can sit there and say, oh, really? Well, we do believe it. We've used these consultants in previous city studies. And when we had carpool, 25,000 people came this summer to carpool. When they did the analysis for what would come to Furman, they said, you'll expect over 100,000 visits a summer. We said, no way. We exceeded 100,000. And I think they continue to year in and year out. And it's that fun factor. It's getting kids up off the couch, becoming active. So when they say 333,000 a year, we believe them. They also then broke it down, and they said that approximately of those 333,000 visits, 57% will come from Ames, and they called it the primary service zone. Then they said the secondary cut of the service zone would go out to about the radius of Nevada, Huxley, Slater, Story City, Roland, Madrid, and Boone. 30% then would be coming from that geographical area. Well, that's 100,000 visits. So very impressive. Another 13% beyond that. So we're looking there probably zeroing, you know, some of the outliers still within Story County and beyond. So when we went out, and Ann and I went officially before the Story City Mayor and City Council this past summer. Keith and I went over and met with the city manager, the mayor, and Parks and Recreation staff in Nevada. Keith went and met with city administrators in Huxley. Just to give you a snapshot, when Ann put that slide up, there's been a lot of conversation within the county. It was county officials, public officials. We felt, again, that they're representing their governing entities as best they can. Good question. So with that, here's what the essence of it, and I would say the red thread was. that they want to have their own things locally. They want to continue to have sport leagues. They want to have their yoga classes and the social networking of the small children's basketball leagues. But what they almost all collectively were one-minded on was that they don't have the revenue because they don't have the tax base to have their own indoor year-round aquatic center. They don't have the funds, again, as Ann mentioned earlier, to do a magnificent indoor playground that kids love and want to be active and use. They don't have the funds for a participation kitchen. So when we look at then the county participation of this 30%, we thought, well, is it fair to put basically then a 30% amount to those capital funds to start with, and on those three features, not the 48 million. So with that being said, you can see we just kind of sketched it out. The aquatic center is about 18.2. The indoor playground, 1.4, and the participation kitchen equal 1.4. So if you put those, all together, it'd be that 21 million or roughly 6.3 million. Or if you just take the pool alone, it'd be 5.4 million. So we didn't think that that was, again, probably feasible given the economic times we're all under. So Story County is being asked, we went to 3 million. Then we did the operational deficit. Steve already reviewed it. It's at 673,000 roughly. So again, we did the math of 30%, 202. But we're asking Story County for 200,000 on an annual ongoing basis.
$2 million and go over again for me where you went from 2 million to 3 million?
Sure. So Loris is asking, probably 18 months to 24 months ago, we all had different potential amounts. And that was that amount of when Loris is raising now the 2 million now versus the capital of 3 is before the RDG feasibility study. And before we have an attachment, and you may wonder what it's for, that we made a mistake putting this on your desk, but it's this document, and it's from a year ago's report out with RDG. And that's where, again, on page 9, the numbers Steve was reviewing and the ones that we are still tonight, Loris, going back to what we all talked about last year. And it was these numbers you're seeing of the 3 million from the county and 200.
So let me finish up and we can open up for questions. I think we will. Let me just remind you then. So back on the slide, after April, we finalized the agreements. We're looking then for an August bond issue, August of 2019. You can move ahead, Donna. Let me just have one. Yeah. So after the bond referendum, we'll need 60% of the voters need to approve this, right, for us to move ahead. Assuming, and I'm always assuming it'll pass. And here's a little bit of a layout of what will happen next. We'd move immediately into retained architectural engineering services. That'll take us too much for the selection process, perhaps. Design documents could take 9, 12 months. Don't hold me exactly. This will give you just kind of a frame of reference. Project out to bid in 2 months. Review and award the contract another 2 months. Groundbreaking construction could take 24 months, perhaps longer. And ribbon cutting anywhere in 2022-23. Okay, that gives you a little bit of a schedule for you. All right. Donna, you gonna open it up?
Thank you. So this is the opportunity to give feedback, to get clarification on what you've already heard. Nancy Carroll will have a microphone for the public input over there, and then anyone around the dais or around the horn here. Anybody want the microphone? Yes.
Gloria Betcher, Ames City Council. I just wanted to point out, this isn't a question, but Nancy and Steve and I worked on an application last fall for the National League of Cities Innovative Ecosystems Program, which enabled us to be one of 50 communities nationwide who have access to support from the National League of Cities for marketing and establishing partnerships with National League of Cities partners for in our case, the Healthy Life Center. We sold it as an innovative project that would allow Iowa State University to have applied learning activities, and that this would be a unique facility around the country. And at this point, I don't know what's going to come of that. We haven't heard anything new, but we do have the ability to tap into their partners, and it may be something that the fundraising team would want to explore a little bit more. I think it's at least an opportunity for something that we haven't looked at yet, and who knows what it could lead to.
Thank you, Gloria. Yes.
Hi, Laura Solson, Story County Supervisors. I'd like to ask the question of the room. Could anybody who is from outside the 2-mile area around Ames raise their hand? Just one, two. Okay, thank you. Just wanted to take a feel of the balance here tonight. Here's my question that boils it down. Story County would likely have to also bond for this at a $3 million level, almost any level. And what I hope everybody realizes is you're all residents of Story County. So you will get 2 bonds. You'll be paying for the city's bond, and then you're going to pay for whatever the county might bond you for. So the only people who are really affected, but negatively, if Story County goes in and bonds, are those people lying outside the city of Ames. Why wouldn't Ames, or would you consider, just take on the 18 million instead? Because the same people are going to pay the same amount, whether it's split or roughly 15 million and 3 million or 18 million total.
Thank you, Loris.
I mentioned that I know of many people who participate in the city recreation program, and they come from out of town, rural Story County, and the smaller towns. If they have to pay the admission without having the subsidized or equal to Ames admission to the Healthy Life Center, that will be a real detriment to their participation in things that have to do with wellness. So I think that if Story County residents can pay the same fee to enter or become annual members, that will be impactful.
I'm sorry, you really must speak in the microphone.
So what if Story County just pays the subsidy to even that spread out for those residents outside of Story County that actually are using the facility? So if it's, I don't know, I know it won't be, but $100 for City of Ames residents, and it's $125 for residents of Story County outside, we might be better off financially by just paying the $25 per person. I just,
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Rick Sanders, also on the Board of Supervisors. So couple points and then a question. So the first point is what a fantastic concept for our community to really dig in and explore who we are, what we need, and who we can be. And so the point I want to make is thank you to everybody, staff members, galore, Donna for sure, specifically Warren and Bev and Ann for the efforts they've put in to get us to this point. So now the question. So Steve, I heard you say you're looking for commitments I mean, like sign on the dotted line kind of commitments from these 6 partners over the next, and I'm going to call it the next 30 days. That's what I'm hearing. Can somebody walk me through how you see that decision point go? So my partner Loris is starting to ask the questions that we're all going to need to ask. I mean, individually, and there are going to be different questions from each entity, I'm sure, but that we're all going to need to ask as to what our support looks like, how we can get there. Loris, I don't agree with you on the concept that the bond would be the same if it's paid by exclusive by Ames residents and Story County residents, but that sounds much more like a conversation that we need to have at our board table. And what I'm asking for is, what kind of resources are we going to have available to us, any of the decision makers, as we go through our due diligence and our process to get to a final decision that we can commit to?
What type of resources? What are you thinking?
Yeah,
about?
so I'm asking who will be available to us. So Loris will put this on our agenda, I would assume, at some point in the future. Okay, yeah. So it'll be on our agenda for February 19th is what I'm hearing. And what I want to know is, are you counting on just the 3 of us to take the information that we've received to this point and talk it through? Or Steve, will you be there? Will Nancy be there? I mean, who will come and help walk us through our conversation and every other entity's conversation as they get to a decision point?
Sure. We'll I'm assuming I'm available then, but we'll have people there to help you. And for any communication and information you need. Of course, it's tough to answer your question because there's a lot of, it's intricate. You ask about justifying it. I think the concept here, the partners can't look at you. If you look on the return of investment again, it's an investment in the total county. If you're looking for an individual payback or justification per person, it's probably not going to be there. None of us could say that, but it's an amenity that's going to attract people here. It's going to keep people here. And it's hard to start isolating funds. I don't know, maybe you can tell me what percentage of tax receipts you get comes from, we can raise our hands, comes from the citizens of Ames versus Eastern Story County and your total budget. I imagine it's pretty large. But I don't think we tell you all the time, justify that every dollar you get from us is only spent within the city of Ames. It's tough to track it that way. So if you're trying to show a direct return to the people outside of the Eastern Story County versus us, it's going to be hard to justify. You've got to see it as an overall amenity that's going to benefit this community and Story County.
Loris, I'm sorry. I need to have you wait for the microphone.
Rick's right. We have to have this conversation, and each one of these different entities are going to probably will, I'm sure, be responsible and take a look at their own constituency base. You are correct. Ames residents and their taxes to the county pay for essential services outside of Ames. You subsidize the rest of the county, if you want to look at it that way. It's when we have tight budgets, what do we look at cutting? But that's a conversation for the 3 supervisors to have. Right now, as we go into our budget system, that $200,000 a year you want as a payment, okay, that's where we're different right now headed into as we work on our budget. That's our negative spread that we're going to work on next week. So, we're the little funders, as far as amount of dollars rolling in, but our expenses are lower. But that's why I think we're asking some of these questions.
Thank you. I think there's a question on the floor that Rick would like to respond to.
Oh, yeah, I know, Steve, I like numbers. So the answer to your question is Story County has about $7.5 billion in taxable valuation, and fully $5.5 billion of that is on this side of I-35, primarily in Ames, but also in this major catchment area that we're talking about. That's right. 5.5 billion of the 7.5 billion.
Thank you,
We don't want you to
Rick.
forget us, I guess what we're saying. Don't forget us in the city of Ames when you make your decisions.
Hi, thank you. I'm Eve Lederhouse with the Parks and Recreation Commission, do you have a marketing or communications plan in place to communicate with the City of Ames before the bond vote? And how is that going to be done?
Eve, great question. We didn't put it on a slide, but subject to what happens now over the next couple of months and ultimately whatever the city council decides in that March, April timeframe, as you can recall, because you were a big supporter of the Furman Aquatic Center and the Step Up Dive In campaign, it was a friends group. And the city council always looks to a friends group to come forward before they say, yeah, we're going to do this, because you have to know you really have a big base of support. And we believe when Ann put up that slide of the 1,000 people we've already talked to in all of those meetings, the 200 philanthropic, the support for this is staggering. So there will be, we believe, already a big friends group. Then there will be a comprehensive, again, campaign that will go out on the behalf of the friends group. The marketing and the actual publication and the yard signs and all those things have not been created. And we're looking for good people in that realm. So if anyone knows of anyone, please send them in my direction, or Keith. Well, not Keith, sorry. Keith cannot get involved in advocacy. I can. Send them my way.
Who else would like to speak? Yes, please, Jeff.
So Donna, now we're transitioning. I think we wanted to separate between you folks, anything else then from the governing bodies, if any questions, clarification first.
Okay, Gloria.
So when we're seeing the numbers on the project, Steve, are these estimates 2022 dollars or 2018 dollars?
They're actually $2019, I think. $2019.
Others around the table. Yes, Ed.
I'm Ed Moran from the Parks and Rec Commission. Keith, this might be a question for you. What do we currently operate in a deficit at the municipal pool?
At municipal pool, we currently subsidize that facility with about $85,000 to $90,000 per year.
Anything more, Ed?
That's only open. The municipal pool, remember, that only has one basin to it, so this project's a lot bigger.
Others around the table. Thank you very much. We will transition to public input.
Sorry to be running late for the general conversation on this. I had another meeting, but I want to go back 20 years ago when my family and I moved to this community. And probably after being here 2 years, some folks say I'm kind of critical of Ames. I want you to know I'm in love with Ames. And when you're in love with something, you are critical of it. And one of the questions I started asking early on is why a community as educated and as vibrant as Ames didn't have a YMCA. And part of what I think about a lot is we have a lot of what I'm going to call private amenities in this city, but we have an incredible population that would never go to access some of those private entities. Some of that is economic, but some of it is just outside of who they are based on how America is situated. And I think that this community, even with the healthy life zone situations that we've been presented with Blue Zone and so forth, needs to recognize that part of the health of our city is the health of our citizens. And so we need facilities that are more accessible to the general population. So when this was first really brokered, for me, I looked at it as if this is my personal answer as a citizen to a YMCA, it has my support. And so Peg and I met with the committee. Don't mind saying this, it's not for any public pats on the back or anything, but didn't grow it with a whole lot, but I have been blessed in terms of where my life is now. And I care for the rest of our citizens. And so this project is one in which we feel very strongly about because it covers some of the same things that YMCAs look to. And that is the health of the entire community, not just a section of our community. And it's the way that we bind ourselves together as a community and look out for those other populations. And I think the idea that we're going to be mixing in this education, wellness, outreach, personal care, offer some opportunities that I would have hoped that we would have been thinking about. And I say that very strongly, that mirrors what a Y stands for. And so I'm here tonight to say, support this project. Let's figure out the funding. We can do that, but let's support this project because it supports our entire community. And I think it's time. Lastly, I look at this as a regional opportunity, and I think Ames, for whatever reason, chooses not to be a regional community. Well, in Story County, we are that hub for regional activity, and this gives us that opportunity. And there will be those surrounding populations and county or communities that will benefit from this facility. And so Ames needs to drive it, and just want to share those couple of points.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else? Yes. I got it. Yes, thank you.
Hi, Ann Kinsel, and I'm addressing this group this evening as a resident of Ames and a resident of Story County. And I'm proud to be a resident of both. What's really exciting about this is not the building. Sure, everything that we do needs a physical place, a building to call home. But I see something much more exciting than a building. I see a commitment by our communities and ourselves towards health and well-being. Sure, a lot of things will take place in a building, but most importantly, what we're talking about is creating an ethos in our Story, Ames region that will be devoted to the health and well-being of all the residents in all our communities. And I think that's the most important thing we're talking about tonight.
Thank you, Ann.
Hi, I'm actually here, as I thought about this, representing 3 different entities. So my name is Stephanie Downs, and I am responsible for the well-being for the employees at Iowa State University. I started that job in 2014, and one of the biggest things that the employees have made like a hot potato and come at me about is having a facility that they can go to on campus, or at least getting some kind of membership paid. And we've not really been able to do that. In the current facilities are wonderful for the students, but don't even come close to touching the 6,700 employees that we have at the university. So I wanted to have that chance to speak from that front tonight. Not only is this have the impact on our employees for their fitness, but probably the great attraction to me, and I've talked with Nancy several times, has to do with the social component and what it can do for bringing entities together, including our employees, faculty, and staff at the university. Warren mentioned the healthcare costs. We're looking at that as well and how we can continue to incent. And I can tell you with the programming that we'll be providing, we are keeping a very close eye on this, and we want to provide that for the employees as best as we can. The other piece that sometimes we forget about and we don't think about in buildings like this is the engagement piece. Iowa State, like many others, has trouble with people are retiring. We're hitting that age where there's a lot of turnover, and we need to attract people to this community. This is a huge attracting and retaining piece to our community. Yes, for Iowa State employees, but even as much so for this community. And I hope that you don't forget about that piece and really consider this. The other side is the programming. Trying to program for 6,700 employees isn't always easy. This physical space creates some great opportunities to partner with some of the research going on at Iowa State, with some of the incredible facilities we have and will build with the Healthy Life Center. And I would speak specifically to the participation kitchen. I had the opportunity to go to Mayo Clinic, and I've seen that. But one of the programs we started at Iowa State is called a culinary boot camp. And we offered this in the last 2 years. We use the chefs from Iowa State. We have a young PhD student who put the curriculum together. We have the kitchens at Iowa State, but they're limited in space. So it's a joint effort between ISU Dining, Food Science and Human Nutrition, and the ISU Wellbeing to come together and provide, and the Students Culinary Science Club who do the volunteering to provide this. Folks come for 2 hours, they get some education, they get to watch a chef demo, and they spend the last hour in the kitchen making recipes, learning skills, really doing that skill set, and then they sit down and they have a mindful eating experience with the food that they've just created in those kitchens. It has research proven to have a significant impact on those employees and students who have gone through this class. And in addition, continue to get incredible feedback about bring us more, bring us more. This was life-changing. This facility has the opportunity to provide that, not just for the employees, but to the community as well through the partnership with Fairway. I also want to speak from the Healthiest Aims, if I may. I recently became the president for the Healthiest Aims Advisory Board, and I have some awful big shoes to fill. But what I can tell you, and I want to share from that group, is we have 4 key areas that we're working on. Physical activity, healthy food choices. Yeah, I had to write these down. I knew I wouldn't remember it all. Community connectedness, and health condition awareness. And again, I want to bring back the piece that makes this facility so unique is the big open space, that gathering space, that sense of community. Yes, it will support physical activity. Yes, it will support the healthy food choices, but it also brings that sense of community that so many have spoken about today, where people can come together and share. And I can tell you that over the next 2 years, the Healthiest Aims Advisory Board will be focusing on supporting this Healthy Life Center and doing everything we can throughout the community to make this come to fruition. It's important to us and it's important to the community. And lastly, I know that you asked if they're citizens, and I am too a citizen of Ames. I have been here for over 25 years and I love Ames. It grows on you without a doubt. But I came from a small community in Northwest Iowa. And I think that that's another piece of this is that sense of community that can make Ames even greater and more attractive to that. But as a mom of 3 boys growing up, I would have given anything to have this indoor facility throughout the winter season, including late fall and through March when the weather is so unpredictable, let's put it that way, given this last week. And I had another, and I think this impacts others. Last year, about this time, my mom had a major health condition, and we moved her from Northwest to here in Ames temporarily in assisted living. And she was moving out of assisted living and had that opportunity. But the greatest disadvantage through the month of January is there was nowhere for this 86-year-old woman to go to walk in a safe environment. There was the mall, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this indoor place that is geared for that we could go and have that facility to walk through. That would have been powerful, not only for me, but for my mother, and to have the opportunity to be surrounded by that activity and by young kids and everything else going on really boosts that emotional status as well. So with that, as an employer in Ames, or an employee representative, as a board member for the Healthiest Ames Advisory Board, and as a citizen of this community, I would strongly encourage you to consider whatever you can do to bring this facility to Ames. We need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any other comments that people would like to make or any clarification needed? Okay. Any further comments from those who have already presented? Anything else? Okay. We promised you that we would give you the opportunity to walk away with more information and an increased understanding of the Healthy Life Center so that you can make a conscious decision regarding your support. We also promised you that you'd have an understanding of the philanthropic support to this point, and that you would have clarity on next steps. That's what we committed to. I hope that you believe and feel that that is what you received. If there are no other questions, then we will call for adjournment. We'll start with the Ames City Council. Ames Park and Recreation Commission. Thank you. Mary Greeley Medical Center Board of Trustees. Hi. Thank you, Ken. And then Story County Board of Supervisors. Excellent. Thank you very much. If we could give a round of applause to all of our presenters and all of the volunteers that are doing this. Thank you for a fabulous evening.